Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the R&D Podcast. I am your host, Rachel.
And I'm Delia.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about submission.
Submission. Da-da-da-da.
So often, we've been seeing on social media, right, where a lot of the guys, whether it's Bradley or who's the other one that's hiding out right now?
I'm trying to think.
The top G. Why can't we?
I don't know.
Why can't we think of his name?
I can't think.
The bald guy.
Oh, the bald guy. Oh, what? Okay, so with Bradley, so we'll think about his name right now. But with Bradley, the one thing that I know that was very controversial was that he says he had a magic floor, right? Is that what you were talking about? That he takes off his clothes and then next thing you know, So this is what he says. He's like, I have a magic floor. Yeah. And he says, I take off my clothes and I leave it on the floor and then next thing you know, it's folded and put away and it's washed. And so basically what he's trying to say is that with submission, his wife is doing all the things. Yes. He seems like he's a very well-to-do guy, so I almost would question whether or not his wife is doing it. Maybe he's got housekeepers or whatever, but either way, that's what he says, that he's a provider and she needs to then step up to the plate and be that girl.
He does say some really interesting things because he'll say if you're complaining about how much money your wife is spending, that means you don't make enough money. And so I do like a lot of the principles that he has come out of the gate, swinging with. And one of them is he says, a true alpha male or, a high level man or whatever wants a woman who's going to submit. Yeah. And so he says he gets this question all the time. Well, what if his wife wants to do X, Y, Z? And he's like, no, I need her to submit. And we wanted to do this topic because as much as we hear everybody from Jordan Peterson, the top G, which we can't think of his name right now, and, Bradley and other people talking about, women, about being alpha males, right, on that bro marketing stuff, but then also coming in and telling women that they need to be more feminine and that they need to submit and they got to give up this girl boss sort of attitude and everything, which we agree to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, yeah.
But we have talked about this. We as women struggle to submit. I think we really want to be able to submit, but we struggle to encounter the types of guys that can really take the reins and make us, right, as women, right, feel safe. And that we can truly surrender, by the way, knowing that in 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, he's still got us. Meaning, like, he didn't go out on the streets and, like, pick up some other girl or, like, his secretary at work. So I think the biggest thing with women that it's so hard to truly submit and not always be having one eye on the exit door and like how to establish ourselves in that way is because men have dropped the ball, right, in many ways in that area.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think oftentimes, we've talked about this so many times that, there's a fine line between knowing that you got to get things done and that you're a businesswoman, and there's a fine line between that and then being in people's faces like, I'm a girl boss, like I'm a boss. Yeah. And I think that, guys don't, go in this world talking about I'm a boss. Not most guys don't anyway. And I think that there's no need for you to have to voice that and have to feel like you have to tell your husband or your significant other, like, I don't need you. And I think that that's the problem.
I think that's
these days
the part.
Is like, I don't need you. I could do for myself. And I think it's about understanding that there's a respect factor. It's like, I don't need you, but I want you. And I think that if you can come from a place of, I don't need you, yes. And I think he would know. And if most men are wise enough to know, I don't need you, but I want you. And so there's that aspect to it. And then on the flip side of what I'm saying, with what you're saying about, the women coming in and saying, all the things that they're saying, I think that men need to know, like, okay, I'm going to respect my wife and she knows that she's safe with me. I'm going to take care of her because she takes care of me. And it's like, we're a partnership, we're not enemies. And I think oftentimes there's that fine line between, you know what, you need me, and so I could treat you this way. I can mistreat you. I can talk down on you because you need me. And so I think that when you come from a place of that, then you don't feel like you're connecting with your partner and you have a partnership. You feel like you're almost sleeping with the enemy. And I've heard married women literally say, I feel like I'm sleeping with the enemy. And this is what they're saying about their husbands, by the way. So I think that if you can come from a place of, we're unity, we're a partnership, that's where I think, it's a difference.
Yeah, I think also when you're saying, the partnership thing, I think it's also important to recognize that we're coming into an era, we're moving away from girl boss hustle era, and that COVID really spawned a big amount of, and we're moving into soft living and, women wanting soft lifestyles. But even right now, there's a trend that's called the soft girlfriend. And what's happening is that the girlfriends are moving in with their boyfriends who are successful, and they're just focused on Pilates, their smoothie, self-care, looking great for him and things like that. And then he gets home, and then they go to dinner and she looks fantastic on his arm, and it's the soft girlfriend mode. And that whole thing is interesting, but I'm starting to hear rumbles even from that group of females that are in their 20s, and they're saying, oh my gosh, I did that with him for 4 years, and now I didn't go to school, I didn't work on my career, and now he moved on. He's now, we broke up, I moved out, I can't even pay rent. And so there's this whole thing back that fits full circle, even whether you're the soft girlfriend lifestyle or you're a housewife or whatever it may be, and you're trying your best to make him feel confident and submit to him, that you may not be safe to do that. The whole thing goes back to, is he trustworthy, and do you feel safe with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it boils down to with that, Rachel, is like, we don't have a magic crystal ball to know what, their temperament's going to be in 4 or 5 years. That's the unfortunate part. Not to mention, things could shift. You can get sick. Maybe you're not on your tens. You're not doing all the things that you were doing at one point. And I think that sometimes too, when you're with someone so much, then that causes fights, that causes chaos, that causes a lot of things. And so I think that as long as you don't lose focus on who you are and what you're supposed to do, because oftentimes, we did an episode called Living in the Shadows of a Man. Yeah. And so as long as you're not living in the shadows of somebody, but you're actually living your purpose, then I think that you're moving in the right direction. I think there's nothing worse than, pretty much putting your whole life on pause for a person, and then he changes his mind, and all of a sudden now you're stuck, like you're saying. Now she can't even pay for rent, because guess what, she kind of had a borrowed life with him, and so she had all the things while she was with him, but the minute he X's her out, because it's a soft girlfriend, it's not like it's a marriage thing where it's like, now you got to work things out. Now he's like, yeah, you know what, you're cool, but I kind of like somebody else. On to the next soft girlfriend. And then if you don't position yourself in a way that you're like, okay, I'm still working on my career, or I'm still having a little side hustle that's allowing me to feel fulfilled, and now I'm, instead of putting my life on pause, I'm still doing these things. So this way, if things do happen, you don't feel like, you were the last one to find out, because there's nothing worse than that. Than being the last one to find out about, like, he's gonna leave you for whoever,
or being just an accessory, in his life. They
true.
say a beautiful woman is equivalent to a man. That's a man's like highest jewelry.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, like a purse.
And so the other thing that I wanted to kind of dive into is, what are ways that you can show submission to your partner? Let's just say specifically to your husband. There's a lot of little simple things that I have witnessed. Again, I'm a boy mom, and I've heard the guys do, say certain things about certain girlfriends or whatever. But I will tell you, I even tried this with like my sons, and it's so funny to see it actually work.
Yeah.
Here's what I've learned about being a boy mom that can help you in your marriage with your man. And he might act like a man child, right? But here's what can help you. But I can tell you that.
Act like a man child.
No man child. But I can tell you this. They need a sense of purpose. Like, that's number one. Number two, they need to be able to solve or fix things for you. If you are a person who has more ideas on how to solve things, or you are a person who says, no, don't worry about that, I'll just do it, and now you're solving it, and I'm going to give you an example of like the simplest things, then you are robbing him of his opportunity to be purposeful or to be able to be solution-minded. And eventually what ends up happening is they just kind of retreat. And when there is a problem that needs to come up, they go, she'll figure it out. Like, they're not going to fight with you to like do it for you. Like, so you have to identify that there are certain things that they can solve. And even though you can solve it too, stepping back and just being like, hey babe, like I noticed that this is happening.
Yeah.
Or there's a squeak in the door. Like, you know, you can get WD-40 and spray it or whatever the little situation is, but like bringing it to his attention and being like, you know, I don't know, how do you fix it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh yeah, I'll go fix it. But I'm going to give you an example. The jar test.
Oh yeah.
You've heard your grandmothers. We've talked about it last season. The simple jar thing. I do not struggle to open jars if there is a man in my presence. So for example, it could be my cousin, it could be an uncle, it can be my sons. If I go to open a jar and it's kind of a little bit tight, like I'm like, oh, okay, I could turn around and be like, click, click, click on the counter, freaking get a tool and crank it.
For sure.
I immediately go, hey, can one of you guys open this jar? Oh yeah. Two of them will sit up and be like, I got it.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, you have to get in the habit of saying, I'm not going to flex my muscles to crack this sucker open. Like, you don't even need to do it, you guys.
Yeah.
And so start to identify these areas where you're jumping in and kind of doing the most. And it might be the simplest thing and going,
it's opening the jar.
why am I going to flex my muscles for this?
Yeah.
Let him do it.
For sure. Yeah. No, so here's my question to you, Rachel. You know, being Latinas, I know this is more customary in Latin culture of, you know, this is because we're talking about submission right now. What are your thoughts on, you know, like growing up, my mother always made sure my father was served and he had a fork and knife and the whole night, like she'd make sure he was taken care of. What are your thoughts about, you know, being raised in this way? I don't know if you saw this growing up. I know I definitely saw it. And then as I got older, I thought that's the way it should be. And then, you know, as I started to see that most women are like, you got hands and feet, do it yourself. What are your thoughts about submission in that regard?
I think if this is your husband, absolutely, positively, if you want him to act like the king of the house, and if you want him to act like the leader, and you want him to set the tone in your home and provide for you, then you need to respect him as such. I'm a big proponent of respect, and I've come to learn that you know, we as women, we want love, and we will often be willing to be disrespected if it feels like, but he loves me. It's unfortunate to say that, but that's just like across the board. Unfortunately, we can compromise on our respect, and even if we shouldn't. Men would rather be respected than loved, and so so they prioritize respect. So I feel like serving him first, and making sure that that he has what he needs, and even if he does, you know, we talked about, okay, when he gets up, should he put his own plate? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's not worth the fight. Whatever happens, happens. Yeah. But absolutely finding little ways like that to give him his place or a show of respect.
Yeah, for sure. I think that who you were thinking about was Andrew Tate. So as you were saying about being loved or respected, I definitely know that in the past, whenever I've seen his clips, he's always talking about the fact that men would rather be respected. And so oftentimes, you know, when I've seen this, it's like, you got hands and feet, go get it yourself. It's like, I made the dinner, go grab it yourself. And for me, look, I'm not here to judge that. I obviously was raised a little different, and I think it's not that big of a deal if you already made the meal. He's sitting down, he had a long day, you know. And I think that there's nothing wrong. Also, by the way, if he feels that he wants to serve you too every once in a while, because I think it's kind of like the analogy that I make about, you know, a game of tennis where you gotta pass the ball back and forth to have a game, and sometimes you gotta serve the ball, or sometimes that person's gotta serve the ball back to you in order for you to see, like, hey, you know what, he loves and respects me too, as I love and respect him. And I just think that when it comes to those types of things in the past, I noticed that women had a big issue with that. Like, okay, she's going to go serve him his plate. Now she's going to make us all look bad. And oftentimes I'd hear that, you know, it's like, great, now I got to serve him his plate because now you went and did that. And it's never about trying to show up or show off in front of anybody. It's just, it depends on how you were raised. And oftentimes I know that's a big issue, especially now because we're living in a world of equality where it's like, well, if you could do it, I could do it better. If you could do that, I could do that too. And so this equality shift of like, it's not the battle of the sexes, but I definitely think that women are trying to be more alpha and trying to be like, I don't need you, and let me tell you, I know what I bring to the table. I'm not afraid to eat alone. And I think most men, if you are an alpha female, a man knows that about you. Yeah. But then you have to know how to shut it off, where you're like, okay, you're the man, I'm gonna let you lead, because I don't need to be the one to lead if you're truly an alpha male. Yeah. Now, if you're with a beta man, then you have to be the one telling them what the hell is up. And so, that could be an issue unless you're okay or you want to be the one to kind of call the shots.
Have you seen the study? My son brought this to my attention because he knew that we were doing this podcast last season, but there's a study that shows that women who take birth control actually are more attracted to beta males, and the ones that do not take birth control or take 90 days off of birth control, they're going to be back to being attracted to alpha males. And so, historically, before people were all into like this, contraceptive stuff, it was like, oh my gosh, all the alpha males, right? It was like the guys that looked strong, that were like healthy looking, that were more aggressive,
right?
That were more like, hey, I said no, or like, I'm not about that. And it was attractive.
Yeah.
And now we're living in a society, and he was saying, that he saw this study about the contraceptives where, oh my gosh, like, if you're alpha, women are like, you're toxic. Like, you have that male toxicity.
Yes.
And he's sitting there going, what? Let me guess. Now he's like, my God. Let me guess. You take birth control. And they're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And so you got to be mindful of that as well, because if you, like Delia says, choose more of a beta male, then I don't know what that could mean as far as submission. Like, he probably wouldn't even require it or expect it.
Or probably doesn't even care if you do it.
You know what I mean?
On the contrary, he wants to be a servant to you. And I heard that, if you, because I did see the study, I read the study also, and I was kind of tripping out on that, because what they were also saying is that when you're with this beta man, right, because he's a beta man, and especially because you're, taking contraceptives, that when you stop, you then shift your mindset of like, now you just don't see him as attractive.
Wake up from the fog.
You're just like, what happened? This guy's a freaking, it's like dating a woman. And so I think that oftentimes we don't know what we're taking and what we're ingesting, and not to mention, birth control, according to something I read also, you're only supposed to take it 3 years, max 5 years, where most people are taking it for their
all the time,
the entirety of their 20s and 30s. And so then you wonder why you have all these hormonal imbalances. Well, I mean, what have you been taking? And not to mention, I mean, I'm gonna take it even further, like the water bottles that we drink, that's got so much estrogen in it. And so if the mans are inducing that, imagine what that's doing to them and what it's doing to us. So I think there's not only changes that are happening worldwide, just in the aspect of beta or alpha males, and also beta and alpha females. And a lot of women do not want to submit because it's like, I'll be damned if I'm like my mother, or I'll be damned if I'm like my grandmother. Like, this guy's gonna know what I'm about. And I think that it boils down to having respect for your partner and saying, you know what, I'm a loving partner, so I want to do that for him because I want him to know I love him. And so it's not going to cost me anything to show him that I appreciate him. And oftentimes people want to be like toe-to-toe with your partner instead of being a partnership. It's like, you could do it yourself, get up, you go do this, I don't need to do that for you, you got hands and feet. And I always hear that. That's always like, that's always the one saying that I'm like, oh man, you got hands and feet, get up. And it's a whole attitude thing. And so, I think it kind of has a little bit to do with how you're raised. It has a little bit to do with the chip on your shoulder because of what you saw maybe your mother went through or your grandmother went through. And so there's so many things that, a lot of this stuff is triggered by things that you saw growing up. And, we are always going to either become what we saw, or we're going to be like, heck no, I don't want nothing to do with that. And that's why I'm never going to be like this. Or you say, you know what, I like those qualities. Or sometimes we don't even know. Like, I'll give you an example. Say, your parent's an alcoholic. You could either say, I will never drink alcohol because I saw the way my father got. Or you could be like, well, my father drank, so I'm gonna drink too. And it's not that you have you don't make a conscientious decision to say, I'm gonna become an alcoholic. It just happens because that's what you saw. So either you become that, or you say, heck no, I'm not part of that. It's either or. I
think that, if you can, if you're a woman who's a career woman, maybe you built your success, or you're comfortable with how you live, you're self-sufficient, you enter into a relationship, you end up married, and now he wants you to go back in time, let's go 1950s, with it. I think that, everybody, that is more alpha. If you have a man that does handle business, he pays the roof over your head, like he seems to protect you, he seems to be very mindful of like, hey, like we were talking off camera about like fighting for each other, fighting for the relationship, where they're just instead of just like fighting with each other and stuff like that. If he seems like he really genuinely cares in that way, you know, maybe it's something that you go, you know what, I'm gonna do the wifey thing, I'm gonna submit, I'm gonna do the 1950s thing right now that it feels like he's worthy of that. And I know that saying worthy is a strong word, but it's like, I'll give him all the things until he messes it up, you know what I mean? And I think that's, I know for me, I'm a little stubborn in that way. It's like, I will do the most for anybody. To me, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. Some of you are going into relationships going, everyone's guilty until he proves himself, you know, innocent. And so I urge you to kind of try the other way, and at least you could help hold your head up high to say, I did the most, you know, I did the soft things. I was nurturing to him while during your 8 to 5, you're handling business at the office with your team or whatever it is you're doing. He's not your employee. He's not your business partner in that way, right? And so in your life, you might be the CEO. You know, my company would call it CEO, but like you might be the CEO, the head. You might be the brilliant one at your company that everyone respects. But when you come home, if you want him to act like an alpha male, you have to kind of assume the role of like maybe VP, you know, and that's not easy to do in the corporate world, and I could imagine it wouldn't be easy to do in your private life. But if you are a business-minded woman, start to look at it like that, to go, okay, actually here in this machine, this organization, it's our family and our household, like I'm the VP, you know, he's the CEO and he's in the lead. And by the way, sometimes in the name of submission, you got to watch them go the wrong way. Like you can say, hey babe, like, okay, I noticed that we're doing this, but like, should we pack like a 911 kit? I don't know, like, you know, and if he's like, no, it's fine, and then you crash and burn, well, that's part of the journey of him going, oh, I should have probably listened to her. You know, sometimes it's like with children, we talk about, you got to let them get on the bike and like fall off the bike. Instead of going, no, Timmy, you're going to get hurt. Like, no, don't do, you know what I mean? And I think as women, you know, last episode I talked about like rushing the field. I think we need to resist the urge to rush the field and save the day, or like save his day, or go, babe, you're going the wrong way, like, oh my God, throw your body in front of the tracks. Like sometimes they need to maybe make that bad investment or whatever and then be like, oh man, I should have maybe listened to her a little bit more.
But I definitely think when you're with what you're saying, I do believe that it's normalizing also the respect factor for women, right? Because oftentimes, you know, I've seen this before, it's like, well, what do you know? And what do you know about that? And it's only because, you know, you're maybe doing the housewifey thing, and it's like, you don't know business, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm the businessman. And so again it goes back to, you know, I say it time and time again, it goes back to just understanding that you guys are a partnership. It's not for you to knock your person. It's to say, what do you do anyway? Like, what do you do around here anyway? Like, you're lucky you're with me because I take care of this. I've seen that a lot too. So I think it's a matter of both parties understanding that there should be a mutual respect, understanding, and love. And so it's like, we are here to work together, not to work against each other. And it's easier said than done, you know, because I think that when you're in it,
in the heat of the moment, it's tough.
And then not to mention, you know, we make excuses like, oh, well, he's really stressed out at work, and then there's this thing going on, and then he didn't really mean that. But when they're actually breaking you down too, you know, and then it makes you feel like maybe the things that you would want to do to be more, you know, to be more submissive, you'd be like, no, screw that. I don't even want to do that because look at the way he is. So I think that if you can get to a place of understanding that sometimes, like, again, I make the analogy of playing tennis, sometimes you got to be the one to be serving that ball, but then that person needs to also get a hold of himself to say, you know what, she's actually trying to have us, you know, make this better, instead of just being, you know, fighting like cats and dogs type thing, you know what I mean? So
I think that a man, you know, if you're one of the Fab 15, you know, watching this, you have to understand that your wife is a reflection of you, in the sense of like, if she's super run down and tired, is she super on edge all the time, like overwhelmed, is she like her hair is not dyed, like she's maybe she's gaining weight, whatever the situation that you see that she's kind of letting herself go, it's because life is heavy. Running a household is a lot. Taking care of kids and raising them is a lot. Making sure that you're still happy is a lot. Making sure that she still feels okay is a lot. Like, she has a lot on her plate while you're just grabbing breakfast, heading out and doing your office stuff or your business stuff, whatever you're doing. She's kind of juggling all these different things. So if you look at your wife and you're like, wow, she's still wearing those same yoga pants and t-shirt that she was wearing, the last 2 days or whatever it may be, that's a reflection of what
she's
of you. And it's kind of manifesting in that way. It's like a plant, with a flower. Like, are you watering it? Are you saying, hey, honey, like, as an alpha, you want to be alpha? Well, guess what? It's very expensive to have beauty in your wife. So you need to say, okay, babe, how much does your hair treatments cost? Like, how much does it cost to get your nails done? Like, or the facial stuff you talk about. Like, what does that look like? Or Pilates or whatever. Those things cost money, right?
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
And as an alpha male who's running this whole conglomerate called your family, you need to take care of your queen, right? And you need to say, okay, it costs $1,200. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
I could do this much, start with the hair thing and let's just go. Like that way when you see her looking great and she's not as overwhelmed or she's smiling, like you can take some credit for that, too, and feel a lot of pride. Because I can tell you something very interesting that I have witnessed over the years. A woman who on her own, it's her own thing to be fit. It's her own thing to be in high heels, hair done, nails done, everything. And also it's her own thing to be happy and joyous every day. They kind of resent that because they can't take credit for that. It's this odd thing. Now, not all men are the same.
Right, of course not.
But they seem to almost take that for granted a little bit more. And so often we go, oh my God, we got to do all these things to not let ourselves go. But when life is heavy, sometimes it's okay to show that, like, I just didn't have time for it, babe. Like, I had to do this, that, and this. Giving him the opportunity to say, you know what? Tomorrow I'll pick up the kids. Yeah. Tomorrow on my way back from there, I'll take them to soccer practice.
Or booking her a massage.
Okay.
Or
you know what,
something.
Yeah. Go head out on Friday and go get a massage. Yeah. Giving him the opportunities to solve it. Yeah. We know that you're a Wonder Woman and you're a Superwoman and you can do all the things, but you don't have to do all the things.
Right. Now, Rachel, I know that you and we talk about this a lot off camera and on camera, actually. We're women of faith. And I know that in the Bible, and I know you're a lot more well-versed than me, the Bible, what does the Bible say about a woman submitting to a man or serving a man? What is that? Do you have any kind of... So
off the top, there's a verse in there that has always stuck to me, and it says, men, love your wife as though Christ loved the church. And so I think it really starts with the man, as well as the woman, right? It's both, right? Yeah, but I think on the male side, being able to remember that it's not just all about you doing for him. It is that he needs to love you the way Christ loved the church. Well, how do you love a church? You make sure that it's kept up. The roof isn't leaking. Right. There's not floorboards coming up. Like, and it's not weathered. They're taking care of it. You go to Europe and you see these churches and you feel the love that the people had when they crafted these buildings. And so keeping that in mind, I'll give you a little example too, though, for you ladies. Is that I saw a woman on TikTok and she was doing a little selfie video and she had just gotten the keys to her home. She spent $500,000 on her home. I don't know where in the United States she is. Yeah. We're in Southern California, so that's hard to come by. But somewhere. She said, I got myself a 3-bedroom, whatever, $500,000, and she goes, you guys, and she was in tears, and because she was single mom, she'd been through it, but she said something that was so profound to me that I wanted to share with you guys. She said, oh my gosh, she goes, this is not my home. Do you understand? She said, this is God's home. Like, God did this. And she looks around and she goes, so I have to clean it like it's God's home. I have to maintain it like it's God's home. It's not my home. It's borrowed. Because, you work so hard to buy something and then you're going to pass away one day and 100 people are going to live in that place. For sure. So when she said that, I thought to myself, as women, we should be doing it for God first. So if you have a husband and he goes and works hard and he helps contribute to have a roof over your head and look around and go, this is God gave me this. Yeah, he's a jerk sometimes. Yeah, he's this, that, and the other. But let me just clean it like it's God's home. So that way you're not like, this freaking dude left his socks again on the floor and being mad at him because it's your house and like he doesn't take care of it. It's God's house. And just treat it like that, you guys. And I think that eventually, if he can see you as the church, like how, with Jesus and all that kind of stuff that I just said, and you can see all that you have in your marriage as belonging to God, you're going to care for it different. You prayed at some point for a husband.
Yes.
At some point, you prayed for a husband. God gave you one. Do you know what to do with that
what
man?
He gave you? Yeah.
Or are you just sitting back going, no, until he treats me right, I'm not gonna freaking XYZ. We gotta think differently.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good one. I like it.
All right.
So, all right.
That's it. Submit safely. Submit safely.
And
right.
cheers.
Cheers.